I will tell you during that season, I had to close the restaurant. I had to close my bakeries. My church closed down because of COVID. I mean, y'all, I've been through 14 kinds of hell during the 13 years. But I will tell you that sometimes I feel like God gives you a vision or a dream for the future. He calls me Victory. My name is not Victory in real life, but that's what I go by now, especially on my show, because that's what God calls me.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored and blessed to bring you this amazing, creative, and the most important title. She's got a million of them and all the creative things she's doing, but the most important one is a believer. That's why she's here on the God and Gig Show. So I would love to welcome Victory Lyric to the God and Gig Show. How are you, my friend?
Hi, guys. I'm good. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
It's awesome to have you here. And we were just laughing because I love people getting into kind of like the back, scenes, behind the scenes. Yes, I made a huge mistake as soon as I started because we are learning each other, learning about each other. But I did approach you first, I believe, when I saw you in a podcasting forum. And I just said, this lady's story is incredible. She immediately spoke to me in terms of resonating with your story, what you were trying to share, all those kinds of things. So I immediately felt like I had a kinship with you right away. But we have to establish that, of course, with our listeners and our watchers. So you are a podcaster and a media person yourself. So you know this question is coming. But I have to do it to everybody, right? You have to do this part. So the 30-second elevator pitch, even though they read the bio, even though they've already clicked on it, you still have to kind of do the thing, right? So just give them in about 30 seconds, the few things that if they don't listen to anything else, which they should, of course, but if they don't hear anything else, what are the few things you always want somebody to know or remember about you?
Oh, well, guys, I am Victory Lyric, of course, and I have a show that is called Revive Studios. And Revive Studios is a talk show that is intended to encourage others into all God called and created them to be. And I think oftentimes we sit on the sidelines with the I don't know, and I'm not sure how to get started, those hesitations. And what we really hope is that when we interview all types of artisans and entrepreneurs and creatives, that you'll see something that'll spark you, that you'll see something about yourself in them and say, you know what, I can do it too. So that's really, the heart of the show.
I love the fact that right away, I love the word artisans. I remember one of the first books I really got me into God and Gigs as far as doing it on my own platform was The Artisan Soul by Erwin McManus. I don't know if you read that one, but that's a huge one.
I'm going to need to read that one.
Check out The Artisan Soul. Yes, it absolutely spoke to me. And it kind of speaks to what I think. And again, I love the fact that we're learning about you and your show at the same time. But I think that that's your heart, right? Is to artisans. That's like an old word, but it speaks to a lot. So what exactly is that? Those people that you're speaking to or bringing on your show, it kind of helps define, right, who you're about. Like, what would you define as an artisan or a creative in your ideas?
Well, I guess we can start with the fact that I was a pastry chef for 19 years. So I had traveled around the country, working in all kinds of different environments. I lived in Maine, I lived in Colorado, I lived in Boston. And so I experienced so many different artisans of all kinds. And that's kind of the thing we love about traveling and going on vacation and things like that, is coming across, or even art festivals, coming across these amazing people that are living their dream, creating things and having businesses by creating. Our God, He is the creator of all things. And so He placed these creative gifts inside of us, and every one of us are so different. I mean, later today, I'll have a makeup artist on my show. Well, that's an artisan. I mean, she's great at something I'm at, and so, and then you'll have like chefs, or even creatives that are digital creators, musicians, the gifts that God placed inside of each one of us. It's just beautiful to celebrate those. And they're all just so very different.
Oh, well, you are clearly among friends. This is why, like I said, immediately it was like, she's one of us, because God and Gigs was a music show when it first started in terms of my passion and my gifting and the people I was speaking to. But quickly it was like, okay, gigs, we all do gigs. Like everything is a gig now. And all of us in those creative areas, like you said, whether you're a content creator, writer, poet, visual artist, drama, and yours, which is the first time I've had a chef on the God and Gig show. So I have to dig
Oh,
into that a little bit. What
okay.
was your experience? I read some of the bio, and again, people who are listening and watching probably have read some of the bio, but just give them a little bit of a taste of those things you experienced as a pastry chef, including one incredible chef that you got to honor with your own cooking, a cake that you made. So just
Oh,
give me a couple of
yeah.
highlights of being a pastry chef and what God showed you in that journey.
Oh goodness. Well, I tried to go to SMU for business school, and then I tried to go for pre med, and that
Mm.
didn't, wasn't sticking. Nothing was sticking. I worked for a chiropractor. I just kept trying things, and then I got married around 21 years old, and we went to Disney World. And I had this amazing experience with food. I mean, the most beautiful food you've seen in your lifetime. And I had just planned my wedding. And so I had just the most wonderful experience with event planning. So it just was just a passion of mine. I remember getting in the limo after we got married and crying because I was like, my wedding planning days are over. And I really had a great time with all that planning, all those details, all the foods and things. And so when we went to Disney World and I saw all the foods, it was like it connected. It was just like a spark went off. And so within 2 weeks of getting back from our honeymoon, I remember my ex-husband, he was like, you have got to go. You've got to go to school. We've got to go get you enrolled. You're in love with this. And it was just so easy for me. Whereas other
Wow.
people were like starting, and it was kind of struggling. I was trying to copy cakes from top cake designers that were not even in my skill level, but I was doing those things. And so it was simple for me. And it was kind of like this, just to help individuals who are thinking, well, what do I want to be? How do I decide? Because I've got an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old right now, sons, and I've got my 18-year-old trying to decide, well, who am I? Where do I fit? And I'll tell you, as I started working in pastry, it felt like this ballet dance almost, this like, okay, I'm keeping all the balls in the air juggling, but it would electrify me. It lit me up. you know and so, as far as to answer your question, I didn't mean to kind of go off
No, that
course,
was
but to help
perfect. No, I
you.
love it.
Yeah. But as far as that goes, I took a job in Maine. I was 22, and I went by myself because my husband at the time was finishing college. I took a summer job in Maine, and I had the blessing and opportunity to meet all kinds of farmers that were, producing amazing crops. I mean, food unlike you've ever tasted unless you've lived up in that area. There's
Okay.
something about hydroponically grown that has like amazing flavor. So they would just come right to the back door at the lodge I was working at and be like, "Do you want to buy these strawberries or whatever?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'll take those. I'll take that." It was a blast. And everybody out there was sort of, that farmer type mindset, the artisan style, where they're literally coming to your door and everybody's supporting one another. It was a huge community. But in that community on that island lived Julia Child and her family. And so they came into the lodge. I had actually gone to Dallas for my husband at the time's graduation from college, and then I came right back. And that very day, all the staff were like, "Okay, so here's what's happening. Julia Child is coming in with her family for her 88th birthday, and you're going to be making the cake, and you need to make desserts as well." Like, okay, and that'll be like in 3 days.
Ho, 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 ho,
Oh
ho,
yeah.
ho, ho, ho. Okay, now
Right?
I'm gonna make you pause. We're going. My daughter does it all the time. Pause. Like I'm learning that from the kids, right? So pause.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have to ask, Julia Child, how old were you?
22. Mm-hmm. I'll have to send you a
And
photo of it.
and what other than God's amazing grace and favor would make them trust you, a 22-year-old, to cook for one of the most iconic chefs in the world?
I know, right? I know. And here's the thing, guys, is that I'm not I'm not particularly young at this point, so the chefs, the celebrity chefs that were on TV at the time, there were barely any. I mean, we were watching Julia Child on PBS. She was like the top of everything, you know. I think Martha Stewart was out and about at the time, you know, but I mean, this was several years ago, at least 20 years plus years ago. And
That's right. We
so
won't make it. They'll do the math. Don't worry. We're good. We're
right,
good. I
right,
totally
right.
get
Let's
where you're
not
going
do
with
the math.
that.
But the point is that we didn't have, you know, all the Food Network. I think was just beginning. We didn't have all those chefs. She was the queen of the food. So anyway, yeah, I was nervous. I mean, I remember my hands just shaking like this, you know, as I was bringing out that cake. But I got to meet her and her whole family. They ate the cake and everything, and then they ordered the entire dessert menu. And she said, "Can I please meet the pastry chef? We just loved everything." She signed my menu. She did photos with me. She was like asking me about who I trained under and whatnot. So it was, yeah, it was a wonderful day in my career.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
For
So yeah. So
sure.
that. So it's so
Yeah.
amazing. I love hearing stories like this because I'm always thinking of the person that's listening that's thinking, it couldn't be me, right? And we're not necessarily, and I know we're going to talk about this later, we're not saying that the pinnacle has to be the performance, the great big door that opens with a great big star, because a lot of this fulfillment, I feel that comes from your life is not necessarily what happened when you were on TV or what happened when you met this person. I feel like, I hope, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of this fulfillment has come from the little things, the moments where God has stepped in and shown you like little things and miracles that have happened throughout your life. But that's a highlight. Clearly, that's a
Yeah.
highlight. I gotta ask, did that lead to the anything bigger in terms of that? Was that a
Sure.
doorway to television? Was it something else that kind of you said this happened, then I gotta take this on. So yeah, was there another chapter after, that big experience?
Well, yeah, because I was just 22 at the time. So, you know, I had a lot of years. I went into event planning in addition to, doing pastry. Kind of had a split career during those years. But I will say that later, a little bit later, I was working with a bakery and we were invited to come on to the Food Network. And so we went on and did the Food Network Cake Challenge. And, you know, I think it's these little things that are on your resume that, you know, people find out about and then, those things kind of propel you forward.
Okay.
But, each little thing. So I was on, the Food Network Cake Challenge and that was a ton of fun. We had a blast with that. And then when I opened my own bakery not too long after that. And then I started on morning television. So they would invite me in to be the celebrity chef on morning TV, Fox 4 Good Day and Channel 5, Channel 8, all the major networks here in DFW. I don't, CBS, NBC, all of them. Even Fox, we were on. But it would just be kind of a regular thing, like every couple weeks or whatever. And my PR person at the time, she's a wonderful Christian woman. And I asked her, I said, "I love this. This is kind of like when I first became a pastry chef. It lit me up on the inside and I felt electric, And
Yeah.
I said, would it be possible, not because I was on TV, y'all, it wasn't about being on TV. It was about the interview process and morning television. It was just it really was about the interview process. I think that's what was lighting me up. And so I asked her, because they said, "You're such a natural, just so easy on TV, easy to interview." And so I said, well, do you think it would be possible for me to create a talk show that would be uplifting and encouraging and maybe have some things about the Lord on there? But it be just clean, fun morning television kind of thing, but all day long. And I would just interview all kinds of people who are doing amazing things. And she said, "I think we could do that." Well, we were planning to, and then I went through a divorce. So it kind of took the carpet out from under me, and it wasn't something I pursued for a long time. And fast forward about, I don't know, 13 years or so, and
Wow.
here I am having finally started my own show. So it's been a blast.
Ah, gosh, I love, and now you did fast forward to 13 years right there. So I do have to
Right.
ask you, and I know that you also have a book that's out, and I
It's
have a
coming
feeling
out.
these two. I have a
Yeah,
feeling. Well, maybe it's. I don't know. Let's see. We'll do the
not
time
yet.
warp thing. By the time
Right.
it's out, is it out? Is it not? I don't know. It depends on when this got out. But the key I want to talk about right now are the challenges, because everyone that's listening and watching also has those moments of, you just mentioned, where your world was rocked.
Mhm.
And I got to ask, in terms of what you learned about yourself through those challenges, and did the dream die? Was it dormant? Was it in the back of your mind to continue becoming a producer and a creative while you're going through those storms? Because I think someone that's listening or watching, they might only see the pinnacles, right? They might see now, and they saw back when you were, cooking for Julia Child, but they don't understand like what happens in those 13, those silent years when God is really taking you through something. So just give me a little bit of or maybe the listener, a little bit of understanding of how you made it through that season.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, during that season, I had to close the restaurant. I had to close my bakeries. I sold the final bakery. I had to sell my house. I had to go to work for someone else to be able to make ends meet. I tried marriage again and had to get an annulment. My church closed down because of COVID. I mean, y'all, I've been through 14 kinds of hell during the 13 years. But I will tell you that sometimes I feel like God gives you a vision or a dream for the future because he knows if you can just see it. See, because he called me Victory. He calls me Victory. My name is not Victory in real life, but that's what I go by now, especially on my show, because that's what God calls me. But I saw victim. That's who I saw. Me. I was a victim. I went through abuse. I went through divorce. I went through all kinds of things. And so I felt like a victim. I felt tiny and small and insignificant. And yet that lie of insignificance did not win. Even though I said, get back from me, God. You put your hand out, you stiff arm God, get back from me. I'm worthless. Why are you giving me these dreams and hopes for the future? But when he's let you see it or feel it and hear, it's almost like a buoy that, you're kind of hanging on like a life raft because it keeps you from completely going under a lot of times when you have hope, a joyful expectation of God's goodness.
Oh, wow. I love that. And you just reminded me of something that was on another interview. It may not have come out yet, but this young man said something that's brilliant that really, when you said victim, and he said the only difference between a victim is a victor are the last three letters. And you just have to choose what your last three letters are. So, Mickey, thank you for that, because it just came back to my mind that you literally have the name Victory, and you just changed the end. You're still a Vic.
Yeah,
You're still a Vic, but you
I love
changed the
it.
end, right? So, yeah,
Yeah.
I love the fact that you, again, are admitting that God was, it felt, I'm sure, like God was absent. And God was not absent. He's always present, but it can feel like he's just like, hey, here are all the dreams. Here's the creative things. I mean, you had seen how God could move in your life, in your creative space. And that's why I think it's so amazing to draw a bridge from the 13 years to now, where now you're giving space for other creatives to speak. So tell me, what's the biggest surprise that you have enjoyed since starting the show? What has been the thing that you're like, wait a minute, I thought it was going to be this, but it's even this? So what's been the biggest surprise as you started this and telling other people's stories on your own show?
Oh, Ellen, that almost made me cry when you asked that question. Because it's emotional, like in a joyful way, in a good way.
Yeah.
I started the show thinking it was going to be about art and the this and that, and it was going to be about the show, and who I was going to interview and what we were going to display and all of those things. But yet, what I have found is it's actually been about these amazing relationships that I've developed with people who are like-minded in the kingdom. And, I told y'all that my marriage ended, my church collapsed, everything, all that happened right at one time. And so I had a lot of alone, aloneness. And I've gone back to church since, and all of that, and so I do have more community now, but I didn't at the time. And along that road, I've had a couple different prophecies about, if you, while you're walking on the path that God has for you in obedience, in each little step, the Lord is faithful to bring others along that path that he intends to have in your life. And so when he removes individuals, they may not have been for your future, and so we can have open fingers and let that flow through like water, rather than grabbing hold and just feeling like everything is bad and everyone left us and whatnot. If we have open fingers for the Lord and say, just let those rivers flow through, bring who you need to bring at this time, for what you have for my life. And so it's been the guests that are on my show that have become friends in the journey, become cheerleaders in the journey. And I didn't expect that. And yet that is, such a blessing.
Oh, I could not echo this enough, as my own show became way more about the relationships that I look, and it's like, how did this happen after, mine started in 2017. So I look back at, oh, it just happened on Facebook, because I have this, I'll talk a little shop for just a second, because we are talking to entrepreneurs. So I'm not selling any tools, but one of my software tools takes my posts, my Instagram posts, and it recycles them for me. So things will pop up from like 220, 21, and it'll be like, it's automatically coming back up, which is awesome, because nobody wants to be on Instagram all the time, right?
Right.
So my software brought up one of these old posts from an interview from 2020. And I saw her, and she's a pastor up in Pittsburgh, and she sang with all these amazing gospel artists. But she's one of my favorite people in a long time. But I just hadn't talked to her, right, in a while. Mm-hmm. And I saw her post. I was like, oh my God, I love that interview. That was 100 interviews ago. Like, I hope she still remembers me, right? What? So I just put, oh my gosh, my favorite person ever, and I tagged her. Not for her to share the episode, just to say, hey, you know what I mean? It was like one of those. And when I tell you the warmest response, she said, oh my gosh, I love you. And she mentions my wife, which is, again, that touches my heart, because it's not just about like you being a interviewer, you know what I mean? It's like, you remember my family. And then she did repost it, and people are like finding it like 4 years later.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And that's where the lesson for me and what you just shared is as entrepreneurs and creators, we can't get caught up in just, well, who's paying attention now? Who's buying it now? Who bought the song now? Who's listening now? Instead of thinking of, what is God doing with that seed that could last your lifetime? It sounds like you're making lifetime relationships based on the experience that you've had over your lifetime. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And people were, people that you kind of get each other now, whereas, individuals in my past, they maybe didn't get what I was going through. I was going through a lot, and so God's sending people in that are, I get you. And these individuals, like people that I've interviewed, there's a few of them that are going to be writing pieces to finish up my book, and sharing a little of their story, which is just, I remember probably 7 years ago, I was at a coffee shop with my sister-in-law, and we were praying about these books that God had shown us. And she looks over at me and she goes, I feel like maybe God's saying something about letters from victim to victory in this book, or maybe it's called that or something. And here we are years later, and it's come back up, and these people I didn't even know at the time are ready to write letters. So it's amazing. Amazing how he planned it way ahead. And I was frustrated because, I'm being a bratty human, right? Like, oh, well, why is it not happening? It's never going to happen. God's not coming through. And, a lot of us are in those spaces where we wonder about the timing of God. Why is he not coming through for us? And we can find ourselves incredibly discouraged and disappointed and losing hope in our lives because his timing is not our timing. His ways are not our ways. We don't see the things that he sees. And recently, he has really been working on me about this very first piece of the Lord's Prayer. And our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. How can I say thy kingdom come, thy will be done, if I don't even pause to look around me and think about the magnificence of how big he is and how big his word is, how long, how many years, before we could even conceive the fact that I was created tiny cell by him, knit together. And I look outside and I live here on the lake and I think about the species of animals and birds and trees and, allow yourself to do that every morning before you go out and do anything. Because if I am in awe of his greatness, I can be in surrender of his kingdom coming, his will being done, And I hate to, keep talking, but I'll give you one more thing. This week, I listened to a podcast, and it was Become Good Soil with Morgan Snyder. It's a men's podcast, but I listen because it's so good. But anyway, the point is that his wife was on there and they were talking about something called a daybreak prayer, which was really in alignment with what the Lord was showing me about the Lord's Prayer and how we can come into this space of being like, whoa, about him. And that realigns our thoughts, our attitudes, everything, first thing. But a line that they had in this, and I hope I don't botch it because I don't have my phone near me. I'd written it down. But anyway, a line that was in that prayer that they did, this daybreak prayer that they created, it had like the Lord's Prayer kind of, and then it had like some of the armor of God, and it just had a variety of things in it. But they do it with their kids. But one of the lines in there was, I come into agreement with who you are, God, with what you were doing, and with how you are doing it. And the how you are doing it really got me, you guys, because I was like, I have not been particularly good with the how he's doing it part, because the how he's doing it sometimes is really not comfortable. Yeah. And so I just encourage you to, you guys to kind of come into alignment with the how, even, because I feel like if we're a lot less resistant, he might be even a little quicker.
You know what? You never know unless you find out. But I love your heart and your sincerity that's coming out right now. And I really hope that people listening and watching are not simply, again, saying, oh, that's just her. That's just her revelation. That's just her victory after 13 years, after seeing how God has moved in her life and resurrecting a dream. I think the key is that this is for all of us. And I love the fact that you paused on to hallowed be your name, which a lot of us don't, again, old word, right? But hallowed just means holy.
Mm-hmm.
And set apart. Right. And so set apart is your name. And it means that whoever God sets apart is set apart. So we are called his holy priesthood, a chosen generation, brought forth to show his life, as First Peter says. So I think it's so key that as creatives, people that have his creative spirit, that we realize that it is not just for those who made it. It's not just for those who God shines on. It's for those that are in the trenches. It's for the Daniels in the lion's den. It's for the Josephs in the pit and in the prison. Like, that dream that you're talking about is not just for the ones that are on the pinnacle. Mm-hmm. Peter wrote that part where he was probably in prison. Most of the Bible that Paul wrote was when he was in the dungeons. Mm-hmm. Like, God does not need you to be on the mountain to have a mountaintop experience like you're having. So I love that we're talking about this. I want to bring it to the practical for a second, because God is working in your life directly with actual things that are happening. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that our creative tribe that's listening also knows that, hey, this does not mean that you have to have like a full-time creative job that everybody is like pouring money into your coffers because you're singing your songs and you're making. So can you just talk a little bit about the practical, we talked about a little bit earlier, our parallel careers, where you are a minister and you are a worship leader and you are a producer and a TV host and a podcast host, but you also are many other things that help you like sustain your career?
Well, yeah. So I am blessed with the opportunity to work from home because I breed Great Danes and French Bulldogs. Now, not what I thought my life would be. I had a construction company around the time of COVID, and we couldn't get metal for the metal buildings. It was a months out, and I didn't really have a way to make money. And something I had always wanted to do was to have a litter of Great Dane puppies, and I thought it would be fun. And I had a Great Dane female at the time. I had two, and so I went ahead and did a litter. And God sent me all these people to help me. There was so much favor and so much blessing, and it was such a fun, amazing thing during the last few years. And it's just been like, the Lord has been taking care of me. We talked about this Sunday about Elijah and the ravens bringing, food to him. It's kind of been like that. I've had to hold on to him every minute for every sale, every bit of everything that I needed. It wasn't because of me. It was because of him, and so I really learned that dependency on him. And so when you were talking about, like you've got your Joseph moments in the prison and whatnot, I really relate to Joseph. So it's been, I felt like this time has been that. I mean, here I am pooper scooping, all day long. Because Great Dane puppies, if you can imagine 10 to 12 Great Dane puppies, one time we had 17, I kid you not, in one litter. Yeah. But you can imagine how much poop is created before they go home, and that's in my job. That's my job sometimes 24/7. But the Lord has been faithful to provide in that. And in his provision, I then can say, yes to him, because I have time at home on my hands where I can do the show. I can reach out to guests. I can take time to edit and whatnot. Whereas if I was out doing a full-time job or whatever, I wouldn't have the time to learn all of those skills. I wouldn't have time to build those skills and those relationships. And I know that over time it's going to be something where this can sustain itself, but we're not there right now. And so the Lord is providing a way to be able to be still enough to learn these things. So I think it's been wonderful. Yeah.
Still enough to learn these things. Be still and know that I am God, right? And so we don't like to be still, especially us creatives. We like to keep things moving. We like to have all things happening for us in this specific area. Like you said earlier, the how. We don't like when God is doing a certain how. We like to determine the how. But I love the fact that you were very transparent. Number one, 17 puppies. I'm just dealing with 2 cats and 1 cat that seems to not understand what a litter box is. So I totally understand to a certain level. But to all the people that are asking about not just the how, but the why, right? The why you're sticking with this. I think you've answered that. So I don't necessarily, because I usually end these interviews with some type of question of, if you could go back to the 22 or the 18-year-old person that you were, what would you ask yourself? That's usually what I ask. But I feel like you've already answered it, because your why is so strong through all of these other valleys and things that you've gone through. So I think maybe I'll rephrase it. What would you say to someone who is not necessarily you, but is going through something similar as you're going through, whether it's a divorce, whether it's church closing down and not having community? What would your advice be to another creative who's in that season that you were in, so that they can get to the place where you are now?
Well, I'll tell you, my sister-in-law has this funny phrase. She says, my darkness doesn't look like your darkness, but it's still there. I mean, we all go through a variety of things. I mean, if you're married, no, you're not walking through divorce, but you might be walking through like a season of not being able to have children or whatever. We all have these dark places, these moments, these struggles. And the struggles, they're constant, I mean, if you're not in one right now, you're about to walk into one, kind of thing. If you're not walking out of one, etc. What people say, but they're there. And they're even there sometimes in just a faith struggle. I'm struggling to keep the faith or to keep hope and whatnot. So I would say to all of you, a couple things. The first one is, if you can take your eyes off of the struggle. And that's not always easy, because I mean, a lot of the struggles, I got to pay the bills and so forth. But if you can take your eyes off the struggles as much as possible and place it on to the fact that the Lord is there. He promised to be close to the brokenhearted. And I spent a lot of years trying to not feel brokenhearted, trying to not walk through the valley of the shadow of death, avoiding it with busyness, with shopping, with this. I mean, we all have various vices, ways that we numb. Might be Netflixing all day, whatever the case is. But the point is that avoiding feeling the pain. And yet, I have come to this space where I learned, because I was holding on to it. It was baggage on me because I wasn't pouring it out to the Father. I wasn't pouring out my disappointments to him, even if I felt disappointed in the fact that he didn't make it all okay. I can tell him that. He's a big boy. He already knows. And so if I don't pour it out to him, that's getting bigger and bigger. And I am more and more like weighted down and exhausted. And there's no way to be very creative in a positive way when you are so drained and worn out from carrying all of this grief, all of this discouragement and disappointment. So I learned the Lord would ask me to come and sit with him. I just sit in quiet space. And here's what we would do. I would picture him at a table right across from me, just a small little round table. And the table had a hole in the center. And then down below was like a pot, like the old fashioned, pots, vessels. Okay. And then in the center of the table, there was an incinerator, like a fire. Okay. And I would pour out those things to the Lord, and I would give him those, and we'd put them in the incinerator, because guess what? He showed me that if I'm carrying all of those disappointments, all of that grief, etc., I cannot have beauty for ashes, because I didn't give it to him. We didn't burn it up yet. It's not incinerated yet. So I'm holding it because it's mine. And so I can stay a victim of everything, right? Because then I have plenty of excuses why I can't move forward or, be who God called and created me to be. So I started to learn to let that weight go and give him each one of those disappointments. He'd burn them up. He's got the ashes now, and we can let him make beauty from them. It's not my responsibility. I don't need to make beauty from those ashes. I tried that too, y'all. That didn't work. So...
Oh gosh, I have been a pseudo trying to be a Christian, whatever you want to call it, for a lot of years. I have never heard anybody explain it like that.
I never saw it either. The Lord is
God, thank God for you, Victor, being open to that, because the very concept of God burning things up, right? We could go so many analogies of the offering, right? Of the burnt offering, of everything that God does with fire, the fact that we are purified by fire. So, there's so many pictures in my mind that are popping up. But the most important one is the one that you just said, which is giving it away, putting it in there, being okay with not being okay, and that God is okay with that. One of my favorite scripture verses, one of the toughest ones, but also one of my favorite ones, is Psalm 53. I think is where where David is admitting his mistakes. And where he says, "Thou desire truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part thou would makest me know wisdom." God is okay with me being totally authentic and getting real with him. Like, he's okay. He's okay
more
with
than
that.
Okay. He wants that with us.
He wants that. And I think creatives, and I've said this, I know we're going to go on a whole nother tangent, but we kind of knew this was going to happen. I've written before about how creatives, you said it, numb the pain. But we even try to numb the pain through doing godly things, through worship, like you mentioned, through overwork, through those things that we say, oh, well, God, if I just pray more, sing more, create more, and we try to use the worship to numb that.
Whatever.
Yeah. And God didn't ask for that. He said, I don't need your Amos. He said, I don't need 1,000 songs. I don't need it. He literally goes down like all these songs you're singing, like, nah, what I want is truth and justice and holiness and all those things, which of course come from being honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that
it's so much self-love too, by allowing myself to feel the things that didn't feel comfortable. I think in religion, we can so often be trained to say, oh, I need to be grateful. Well, if I just got, raped or whatever, I don't need to turn that into gratefulness right away. I need to pour it out because otherwise we keep it upon ourselves, and then shame and those kind of things, we wear them around, and certainly we don't let others and God close when we carry shame. I need to pour out the pain. If somebody just passed away or whatever, I don't need to just get grateful. I'm so grateful he's in heaven. Well, you are, but at the same time, you have to actually go through those stages of grief, because it will hunt you down. Grief will hunt you down, and you'll feel it at inappropriate times. It's going to come out in inappropriate ways, rather than just pouring it out to the Lord. I mean, Jesus, he shows up, he knows he can heal Lazarus, but yet he still takes a moment to grieve, because that's his friend, and so it's so important. Jesus, he models it for us. I mean, even before he went to the cross, he felt the grief of it, the pain of it. He sweat blood, and he cried out to the Father. Does it have to be like this? I mean, I can cry out to the Father the same way. God, it's not supposed to be like this, and because it's true, we're not in Eden. This ain't Eden, so there's going to be a lot of pain. And so we have to learn how to go to the Father, run to Daddy, and pour it out to him. It's not ours to carry.
So powerful, so good. And I hope that people are listening, following, and starting to subscribe to your channel right now, because this is clearly where it's pouring out. You're overflowing right now into our podcast. So I'm blessing God for you and for the example. I always say this, and I put my guest on the spot. Pretty much you are abducted into the God and Gigs tribe once you are on the show like this. So I expect to see you in the membership. I expect to see you doing workshops. I expect to see you in the encore, just because this is, like you said, it's a relationship that's built through where God is sewing and building these bricks and sewing these threads together into his fabric, into his masterpiece. And it's clearly something that we need to hear, that I needed to hear even now. So for those of you, we got to cut it off, or else we'll be here 2 hours, 3 hours,
Sorry,
just continuing to talk about this. No, you're good. I let it go, and I'm not going to apologize. If they're listening now, it's because they need to listen. So for anyone that wants to learn more from you and follow your show, all those things, of course, the links are all in the show notes, but we assume that people need a couple of reminders. So tell them how they can stay in touch with you, how they can follow you, and how they can learn more about your beautiful message of hope and redemption.
Oh, sure. So you can find us on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, at Revive Studios, ARIEVIVE Studios. Or at Victory Lyric, you can find me as well, and they're all connected. So whichever one you can remember, easier.
That's awesome. No, we have all those links there. But once again, everything from your story, from the pastry chef that got that amazing opportunity, to walking through your Joseph experience, through now getting to build your own kingdom, I won't say empire, but your own kingdom platform, right? Where you'll get to bring in other creators. We are so blessed to be a part of it, just to be able to tell your story, Victory. I've been blessed, and I'm sure that the listeners and watchers have been blessed as well. So God bless you. Thank you for joining us on the God and Geeks Show.
Thank you so much, guys.
My friend, thank you for watching this episode. If that blessed you, you got to make sure that you stay connected with this community and this channel so that you can get more where that came from. We're sharing great interviews, tactics, strategies, mindsets, lifestyle choices, everything that's going to help you become a totally confident creator. And don't miss an episode of the God and Gig Show. If you are staying connected to our channel, you'll be able to find us anytime we release new episodes. And you can check out some of our archives of almost 200 episodes now that we've shared over the last few years. Make sure you check out one of the suggestions right now, because it's probably perfect for you to continue to develop as a creative. And continue to stay connected with us, because we're here to help you become the creative that God created you to be. We'll see you in the next episode.